Good day, everyone. This shiny, happy, lovely world we all live in.
Oh,
Let's
baby.
talk. Let's talk about the Canucks.
I think I saw the sun this morning, Paul, at some point in between the rain clouds.
You know what? It was like, 16, 17 degrees. Not having to wear like 7 layers when I take my dog
Yeah.
out for a walk was
Yeah.
it was a nice
Yeah.
break. But
Yeah.
this is springtime. It's springtime and our playoffs in the offing. I'll just welcome everyone here to our weekly Canucks video. Patrick Johnston, joined by myself. I'm Paul Chapman, joined by Patrick Johnston. You probably see the names at the bottom of the screen. You sign up at theprovince.com for our Canucks Report. You'll get all our content, video, stories, everything delivered to you as it happens every day. So you can keep up with your favorite but cursed hockey team. So yeah, Patrick, this season has been so strange to me in just that, not only has it been roller coaster, there's been no rhyme or reason to the way the team has played, from the Pedersen Miller soap opera to, Pedersen and Höglander, who had finally started looking like the player he'd been before, both getting injured innocuously, and then the team actually plays some of their best hockey.
Yeah.
As this stands as we record, and I realize that it can change quickly, they're 3 points out of a playoff spot with the Blues. They do have a game in hand, 5 points back of the Wild on the same amount of games, and the Flames are a point behind them with 2 games in hand on the Canucks. So you can't bank on anything here other than like every game is important. And you look at this road trip that they've had, like total mixed bag, like overtime losses, shootout wins, games where they play well and lose. So can you make sense of where this season is going? Honestly, how do you feel their honest chances are to make the playoffs?
And I will just add before I answer that, and yet they are 2-1-1 on this road trip, right?
Yeah.
Like they're kind of doing what they need to do, but realistically, with 10 games to go, they're going to have to win probably 7 of them. 7, maybe even 8,
Well, when you're in a turtle derby like this, you don't necessarily count on one of the teams, the St. Louis Blues, winning 7 in a row or being 8-1-1 in their last 10.
Well, that's it. Yeah. And that was literally where I was going to go to answer the question, which is, it's really hard to say. Like, it's a toss-up at best, is I would really say, because the Blues had that hot run, they're not going to carry on the hot run. But their hot run reframed the entire thing, which makes sense because, for months it had looked like, well, you would need only 91 points to get in the playoffs. Well, tell me when you've heard that before. And it's actually been true multiple times in the last few seasons that, I guess the All-Star break, it's looked like maybe, you only need 91, but no, it's always 94, 95 points to get in. It really looks like it's going to play out this way. Now, that's assuming that the Blues, for instance, don't completely fall off the cliff. But the Blues have 9 games left, right? So 9 games left. They win 5 of those games, which is in vaguely keeping with their record this season. That gets them to 93 points. That's why you need, realistically 94. It may be more, but if just to sort of say on the balance of probabilities, that's where you're going to land. Utah, look at Utah. They have 11 games left. This is why Utah's out, but 11 games left. And to get to, 91 points, they need to win 8 games. To get to 94 points, they need to win, basically 10 games, basically 95 points, right? Like
those are some advanced analytics you're using there,
but
Patrick.
it's just we're now into reality, right?
No, I know.
How we got here. So Utah has had a good season, but they're probably going to come up short because they haven't gotten it done. It's now down to basically the Canucks, the Blues, and the Flames, because the Flames have these 2 games in hand.
Yep.
But it comes back to, do you believe in the Flames, whose offense has struggled even more than the Canucks' has? So, yeah, I really see it. I do see it, given sort of what we've seen. If you include the game against the Rangers, where they were really quite good but couldn't finish, got a couple bounces against them, maybe had some defensive miscues, but still played very well offensively. They're playing well enough that they should be in the battle anyway. Now, will they be able to win 7 out of 10 games? I don't know, man. That's pretty tough.
For years we talked about meaningful games in March. I guess these are still meaningful. You're right. Can they get to meaningful games in April? And much like the state of the season, The state of their schedule with the remaining games is actually quite curious as well, because it's a real mix of
Yeah, it really is.
of like the worst and the best teams, right? Like you've got, Columbus, Winnipeg, and then you come home, you've got Seattle, Anaheim, Vegas.
Yeah.
Then your last 2 road games of the year, Dallas, Colorado, and then you've got Minnesota. Now, if Minnesota drop a few more, like that's the only team that they're jockeying with that they play. And then you've got the Sharks, and then who knows, last day of the season against another one against the Knights. They may be all locked in and just happy to rest some players at that point. So you can't count on anything, and that's where it really does become a game-by-game mentality.
Well, and you're right. Like, if you work backwards, like, Vegas kind of looks like they've locked the division up. You never say never, but realistically, the Oilers have had obviously some injury struggles. They've fallen away, fell off the pace. The Kings are not going to catch up to the Knights, I don't think. That's going to be a hell of a series. Assuming it's the Oilers and Kings, that's going to be a hell of a series, by the way. But like Vegas,
Miracle on Manchester.
There you go. Vegas, by that last game, maybe they're obviously obligated to play the players they have available, but that may set itself
so
up.
Mark Stone's going to have like a scorched tongue or something.
Or something. Well, he probably does anyway. But you're right though, because there's a lot of sort of there's the must win in Columbus on Friday night. They go into Winnipeg on Sunday. Like, it's a long trip. That's a tough team. Obviously, they played really well against them before they went the road trip. But Winnipeg's really good, and are in a very different space from the Canucks. Nonetheless, they've been playing really well. So, but you're right. You come back. They have this 3-game homestand. They've got the Kraken. They've got the Ducks. Like, games they gotta win. If you just start looking at games, okay, here are the absolute must-have wins. You've got the Blue Jackets. You got the Kraken. You got the Ducks. Right. Then you got the Sharks. That's 4 of the 7 wins. But you need to pull 3 wins out from 2 games against Vegas, a game against the Avalanche, a game against the Stars, a game against the Jets.
And the Wild.
Plus there's the Wild in there, who are either really motivated because they've secured their spot, because they're chasing their spot, or they've fallen away. Like, the Wild game could be a real X factor, because the Wild probably are the other wild card team, but they've also been falling away. It could be a positional spot, depending on what happens with the Blues, and say the Canucks do keep winning here. But the degree of difficulty is not impossible, but it's not easy either. And the fact that there's so many tough games mixed in with those sort of must-have wins, I mean, it's certainly going to be intriguing. And the Canucks are going to win some of those games, but will they win enough of them? And in the end, as I wrote the other day, like, as poor as Elias Pettersson's been this season, he's been good enough that he's still better than the options they have right now, which is Niels Oman, Teddy Bluger, and Atu Ratu. Like, they need to, if he's at all healthy, they've got to get him in the lineup. And if he's not, then so be it. That'll be life. But if they can get him back in the lineup, that will add that much more just sort of stability. Whether he's scoring or not is sort of beside the point. But the sort of defensive stability he will provide will give them a chance to win.
Much like the theme of this podcast and the theme of the season, and like Vancouver weather in the spring, it's unsettled, right? Yes. And it's a mixed bag. And I think back to, and you follow the feedback we get from Canuck fans, or, what's generally out on social media, which is generally a bad idea anyway. But, Quinn Hughes gets hurt right before the Four Nations, and everyone goes, season's over, right? JT Miller got traded, and it's like, oh, EP is going to come back to life. Now we can press on. Nope, that's not what happened. I look at this again. Hoaglander and Pettersson get injured. Like, okay, season's over.
Right.
And then they surprise you. And in many ways, while the team has been let down this year from either injuries to their best players or, just lack of performance from their plus players, there's all these little spikes of people that you maybe wouldn't have expected. A guy like Sherwood, certainly Lankinen from the start of the season, Derek Forbort contributing when people was like, why did we sign this guy? Why did we get this guy? So this, to me, it's this kind of the story of the season. Like, there's been no consistency in any of it. Guys that you didn't think had it in them have actually showed up big in times when they've needed it, and the guys that you expect to show up big have either got hurt or disappeared.
Well, yeah, and I mean, that inconsistency plays itself out in the numbers, and that's something I've written about on Thursday, which is, that this was a team that, for all the good fortune they had last year, right? All the finishing, all the bounces, all the goals. They were still pretty good offensively, right? Like they created a lot more than they gave up. And this year they just have, I mean, they've actually been, if you look at expected goals, and expected goals in the public models are not perfect because there's a lot of things that are missing, but they do generally give you a sense of where the team is getting its shots from. The Canucks have still been a pretty decent team. The problem is that they haven't created anywhere near the rate they did last year. They've also defended really well, but the thing is, when you sit back, you're just not going to be able to push the play, push the pace as much as a team. So last year's team was a very different group in the long run. And that plays itself out in how poor Pettersson's season has been, how poor Miller's season was, how long it took them to really figure out what this defense core was going to be. I mean, they made a real pivot here.
Just let me ask you now then, who's to blame for that? Is it the coach or is it the general manager? Because going back to the start of the season, you had talked about like this was by design, that they wanted to be better defensively.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so we sit here and we pointed all these like the lack of performance from their goal scorers and from the offense, but does this then not fall on the shoulders of the brain trust that wanted to play this way?
Well, some of it was the mix they assembled, absolutely, and they brought in Danton Heinen and it didn't work, right? Like he was an interesting enough player, but like from the outside, but then you put him in this line, and it was just the sort of energy and pace wasn't there. He wasn't the guy they thought. Kiefer Sherwood, on the other hand, was a great signing, right? Like that was a guy that they wanted. Dakota Joshua, obviously, I mean, I think he's been a lot better lately and has been the sort of physical forechecking presence they need him to be. But for half the season, he wasn't there. Like the health thing was a real factor for him. And and then you look at, like I said, the lack of execution from Miller and Pettersson, and we are still trying to figure this one out. But the theory, I think the theory that the two of them were so at odds that it was distracting from their play is a good one. Like they just were not playing with the vigor and energy they needed to be. Neither one was. There are moments. It's actually interesting if you go look at sort of the way kind of shots, all the metrics, any metric you can look at, you can literally see the moment JT Miller leaves the lineup. And it's a sync. And so there was this notion, PD started playing better after. And he's like, no, actually, no. He was playing better before Miller left the lineup. And then Miller left the lineup. And then everything sank. And then Philip Hronek got hurt. And everything sank. And the Canucks have been trying to dig their way back out from that almost emotional performance hole. And they are somewhat back there. So is that on the coaches? Maybe. They tried to do things differently going this year. They didn't have the right players. Like, honestly, Vincent Desharnais, good dude, wrong player for what they wanted to do. Now they've got defensemen who are better suited, like clearly Elias Pettersson, Junior Pettersson, and even, Victor
Marcus
Mancini.
Pettersson,
But Victor Mancini, who's also new, and then, of course, Marcus Pettersson. Like, they can move the puck better. There are fewer issues breaking the puck. Think about the actual rush chances this team has created. Now, they haven't created as many as you would like, but they've actually been doing that in the second half this season, and that is because they finally turned over the roster. So is that on management? Sure. Is that on coaching? Sure. Some of it's been pure execution of the players. Like, you think about how bad they were coming out of the Four Nations face-off. Think of the number of times we saw an exasperated Rick Tocchet, right, post-game. He's been that less so. But he still needs his team to win, and it may be that it's too little, too late. We'll see how things stand in a couple weeks' time here. But is it on the coaches? Sure, yeah. Is it on management? Yeah. And at a certain level, is it on the player? I mean, it has been
it's on everyone for sure.
It's been on everyone, and
all the way up to the owner.
All the way, yeah, always, right? Like there's that in the end, it all everything flows down and. The overall sort of premise is going to be this is how it's always going to be.
Never boring.
Never boring. I mean, what Ed Willis continues to be totally right.
His book, yes, never boring. I know you've referenced this before, but the rush chances have been up, which shows that this team is playing with some mean pride. Anyway, can I just ask you, is there a scenario? Sorry, that's a really bad dad joke for those of you. Yeah. If we had proper production here too, we might even be able to drop in a little sound clip of good old Rush and Tom Sawyer there. But can I ask you then, when you talk about some of this stuff, and again, like even recently, the team's performance has just been so unpredictable. Is there a scenario that you can see? Because part of it for me is like, you sneak into the playoffs, yeah, so what?
Right.
right? But is there a scenario for you where this team does, like, because we've seen signs of life from Brock Besser. I think Jake DeBrusk has been like a sneaky good signing this year. Like, yeah, he was the big splash, but yeah, no, but he's a guy who when other players weren't putting the puck in the net, he was. Like, his numbers haven't been dreadful. They maybe not have been the top end of what you were expecting, but I wouldn't term him by any respect a disappointment. So is there a scenario where you get healthy, Demko's back, healthy is your number one guy, Pettersson comes back healthy and he's had a bit of a rust here? Like, can you see a scenario where they could be competitive in the playoffs and maybe go on a run? Or is this just like, hey, get in and that's gravy from there?
I'm hesitant to sort of sleep on Pius Suter because he's having a really
good
season.
No, absolutely. Right. Yeah, left him out.
But so in that scenario, Pettersson comes back, is able to play kind of how he was playing at least before he left the lineup last week. You got Suter as your second line center. Yeah, you can kind of squint and say, okay, there's a competent team. I don't think it's a Stanley Cup contending team. No. But could it pull an upset and beat Vegas? Yeah, maybe. Nothing's impossible, especially if your goalie gets hot. It's just asking a lot, you to go a long way from where you've already been. And where they've been this season just has not been very good. And despite, all the rhetoric and the efforts and all that, like, they just have not gotten the results. They aren't an exciting enough offensive team. So I think it's unlikely they pull off a surprise in the playoffs, but certainly, you could see them. I don't think they're going to be swept. I think they're in position to have it kind of a somewhat exciting first round. But they're still missing a center. They're still missing a winger, realistic. They don't have Jake DeBrusk and Besser, they're good guys. They play hard. They're good power play players, but neither of them is a true like number one winger, if you will. No one's going to be Mikko Rantanen, but these guys don't even. They're not even Mikko Rantanen light, and that's the kind of guy this team needs.
But I would say there's no doubt, and we've got lots of time to discuss what is going to happen in the offseason. Right. There's no doubt they're an incomplete team, absolutely. But I would also say that when you look at some of the other teams in and around them, they probably have the most star power, the most pure talent, now is that talent going to produce? Because you look at DeBrusk, you look at Besser, you look at Quinn Hughes, you look at Pettersson, you look at Demko, like that's top end NHL talent.
Sure.
And when you consider that they have added much better complementary pieces, in players like the two Petterssons, so they seem more stable as well. There has to be a scenario here where you would say, hey, look what these Canucks are capable of. Now, I'm with you. We've got a large body of work here that suggests something was just off the season and they're not going to get there. But by the same token, when I look at the other teams that are there, they have enough top-end talent to suggest that with a little bit of luck, something could happen.
Yeah. But I still think it comes back to, can you score enough goals?
Yeah.
And they're going to finish the season. Well, they've got 3 guys who scored 20 goals, and they could have 4 or 5. Like, Connor Garland's probably going to get there. Keeler Sherwood's probably going to get there. I mean, Quinn Hughes is probably. So, you end the season with 6 20-goal scorers. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So, there's some finish there. It really comes back to, I think we've already suggested, they need something. I mean, it's the Jim Rutherford thing. They now need a bunch of things to go right for them, right? Like, they do need Demko to be. I mean, he was great. He was great on Long Island, right?
Yeah.
And he was great before he got hurt against the Leafs. Like, he'd been playing really well since he came back. So, if you have him in a groove, and Kevin Lankinen, who I guess is feeling good. It looks like he practiced today in Columbus. You got 2 good goalies, and your defense core is playing well, and you get a few bounces. I mean, they played really well. They didn't quit against the Islanders, and they played. They came back obviously against the Devils. Unfortunate against the Rangers. Like, there is some momentum there. I guess I wonder about, okay, now you're in the playoffs. Can you keep that vibe going? Right? You need they are doing good things, but the vibes only take you so far. At a certain point, it is about your talent level. And can they make that work? Are they better, as you said? Are they as good as they appear to be on paper? And we're still waiting for that to happen. And at a certain point, you have to go, well, maybe no, maybe not. Maybe that's just not who they are. But again, I do find them intriguing. They made an intriguing pivot. The defense is better, but the forward group. I mean, you still need another center and you need a winger. And the team that I think they hope to put on the ice next year will almost certainly be more talented than this one. Although this one, at least on paper, still pretty talented.
Yeah. Well, I know you predicted, we included the Columbus game in our predictions. You predicted 3-2, which you're more on it than me. I predicted 4-1.
Yeah.
So if you look at, you've got Columbus, Winnipeg, and Seattle in the next week.
Right. Well, I mean, they're going to be Columbus. The Blue Jacks have fallen apart. I think the Jets are going to be, that's that 6-game long road trip, midday game. Jets are at home, waiting for the Canucks. I think they'll go 2-1. They'll beat the Kraken because they got to beat the Kraken. And then, So, there you go. 2-1.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you for a change. Well, thanks for this, Patrick. Been very insightful. Again, we getting down to brass tacks, as they say. And I'm not even sure what that means. But that's where they are.
I think it's down to like the upholstery's been taken off. It's the last step.
So yeah, let's hope their season ends a little better and not like McBarge. Capsize in the Fraser River. But yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. The Canuck Report, go to theprovince.com, vancouversun.com. You sign up for it. You get all of Patrick's articles, Ben Kuzma, Steve Yo, and everyone else. And we certainly appreciate it. And we hope for better things for this team in the next week, Patrick. We will talk to you then.